Major accusation on Tipu Sultan is the destruction of temples. Is there evidence of this?
In Malabar alone, in that region alone, he has destroyed about 200 temples, rounding up men, women, even lactating mothers, tying them up to trees, and lactating mothers with infants who were feeding on the breast would be cut off. One invasion by Tipu Sultan stopped spice activities, spice trade, spice growing for 40 years. That place took 40 years to recover back to normalcy. They call him a freedom fighter. How?
Right.
What freedom fighter? He was just like any other conqueror, intent in expanding his kingdom and his religion, as simple as that.
What about the mass conversions?
You continuously extend the borders of your religion until the whole world becomes Darul Islam. Mass rapes, atrocities, forcible conversions or slaughter, cow slaughter.
Hello everyone, Namaste. Welcome back to another episode of the Raavya Sarda podcast. आज के एपिसोड में मुझे लगता है टाइम वेस्ट करना ही नहीं चाहिए इंट्रोडक्शन में, because we are going to talk about Tipu Sultan today and with whom? None other than Mr. Sandeep Balakrishnan. Sandeep sir, namaste, welcome
Namaste.
to the show. I do not want to waste my time जहाँ पर मैं लंबा चौड़ा एक introduction दूँ आपके बारे में, because everyone knows you. So Sandeep sir, when we talk about Tipu Sultan, सबसे पहला सवाल यही होता है कि टीपू सुल्तान को तानाशाह बोला जाता है, टायरेंट, लेकिन टेक्स्ट बुक्स में जहां हमें सिखाया जाता है स्कूल्स में उसका उल्टा है. He is framed or portrayed as a freedom fighter. Why? Was this because of some political agenda या history की understanding ही गलत है?
One word answer: secularism.
Okay.
That's why our textbooks portray him as some kind of a freedom fighter, some kind of a great national hero. That is one word answer.
Yeah,
The
but
kind of pseudo-secularism that has been practiced, that has been in vogue after India attained a questionable political independence, where tyrants have been, invaders and tyrants have been turned over their head and portrayed as heroes. And people who resisted and fought them are portrayed as victims and as villains and rebels. That is a one-word answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
But my question was something else. But yeah, I mean, why?
Secularism.
That's it.
Secularism means Mr. Arun Shourie, I think, still has given the best definition, one line definition of what passes off as secularism in India. What has passed off as Indian secularism in India. Indian secularism consists of branding Hindus as communal.
Okay.
Its practical implications of secularism over the last 70 plus years, at least 70 years, it is a code word. Indian secularism is a code word to capture the Muslim vote bank. Okay, so this is why now, since you are on the subject of Tipu Sultan, he has been turned over from a bigot and a tyrant and portrayed as a national hero, as a great freedom fighter, as a great patriot. In the same way as Aurangzeb has been portrayed as a saint, as a great tolerant ruler. And Aurangzeb was a senior contemporary of Tipu Sultan.
Okay.
Aurangzeb died in 1707 and Tipu died in 1799. Pretty much both in the same century. Okay, so this has been going on about all Islamic invaders, all Muslim tyrants that have ruled over India, and Tipu is no exception.
Correct.
Yeah.
What about the mass conversions? If we talk about mass conversions, वो भी बहुत ज़्यादा होता था और हुआ है, right? If we see, especially in the regions like Coorg and Malabar, Mangalore, mass conversions हुए हैं.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about
So that is part of the, every Islamic invader. Okay, so the whole point about Islamic conquest, not just in India, wherever Islam has gone, Egypt, you don't have any record of how the Egyptian society and culture looked before it was conquered by Islam.
Okay.
The same thing is the case with all the non-Islamic regions in Arabia itself. With the very first encounter of Islam in all these regions, wherever it has gone conquering around the world, the existing culture has been permanently and wholly wiped out. Only India and Hindus have lived to tell this tale. As simple as that. So the point is to capture the land and its people. So it comes from the scripture. You continuously extend the borders of your religion until the whole world becomes Darul Islam or the abode of Islam.
Correct.
Okay, so every invader, every sultan, every nawab, every nizam was no exception to this. Neither was Tipu.
So mass conversions is part of Islam.
Mass rapes, atrocities, forcible conversions or slaughter, cow slaughter. It's part of the same pattern.
Yeah. Correct. So, sir, one of the major accusation on Tipu Sultan is the destruction of temples, particularly in Coorg and Malabar. Is there evidence of this? Or how do we reconcile the narrative that he also protected some temples?
Okay, this is a good question. So, it is not an accusation, it's a recorded historical fact. Let's be very clear about it. Okay. Tipu ruled for about 17 years. He came to the throne in 1782 and he died in 1799. So, that's a solid 17 years.
Okay.
So, throughout the areas that he conquered and extended his kingdom in South India, recorded evidence, shows that in Malabar alone, in that region alone, he has destroyed roughly about 200 temples. Apart from that, according to one estimate, that estimate gives the number of his temple destructions, puts it at about 8,000 temples. But I don't think, it is, that fabulous number. At any rate, it's more than 1,000 or 1,500. So I'm including not just the notable temples, but, temples located in remote corners. Or for example, let's say he is out on a campaign from Srirangapatna, which is his capital. From there, let us say he's going out on a campaign to Malabar. And on the way, wherever he sees some temples and feels that, they should not be there, he'll order its destruction.
Okay. So
you don't have, proper evidence for this kind of thing. Only the most notable temple destructions that he has done, for that you have proper evidence because they are all famous temples. Okay, let's be very clear. You have to piece it together. Unless you go into this level of detail, it's just, scratching the surface of the skin. So that's the thing. So, and of course, he has destroyed temples because he was a fanatic, he was a bigot who believed in the divine commands of Islam. As simple as that. And he called his kingdom not as his kingdom, not as a sultanate of Tipu. He called his kingdom as Khuda Dat Sarkar.
Okay.
Khuda Dat Sarkar means my Sarkar belongs to Khuda. And I am his agent out here in Mysore, who's taking care of this Khuda's empire out here.
Correct.
So he's written, it's very quite amazing how these things come out. When the British defeated him and they took over the Mysore kingdom and they entered the palace, his palace in Srirangapatnam, one of the generals, they found copious documents, obviously. Lots of official documents, and one bunch of these documents contained the letters that Tipu himself wrote in his own hands in Farsi. And these letters he addressed to himself, like people keep a daily journal, personal diary.
Correct.
So there he repeatedly mentions that, this is Khuda Dat Sarkar, and it is my intent to Islamize the whole kingdom out here, but it is very difficult because the Kafirs are too numerous out here. And the accursed Christians, by accursed Christians, he means British. So they are causing a lot of obstacles in my way. So to the extent that, and you know where he sat to write these private letters?
Where?
Every morning on his commode.
Okay.
He recorded. This is recorded. The English general, bureaucrat, a military guy named William Kirkpatrick. He has compiled these letters of Tipu Sultan in a thick volume called the Letters of Tipu Sultan.
Okay.
It's in English. You can read it. So he mentions that he sat there every morning and wrote these letters to himself.
Okay.
So there he mentions why he destroyed temples and what are the obstacles for him that prevent him from establishing a totally Islamic rule out here. So in this infidel land.
So it's a anti-Hindu sentiment. Which
everywhere, more than anti-Hindu, but every non-Muslim is a kafir.
Is a kafir for them.
So he does not address the British as British. He calls them vile and accursed Christians.
But not British.
Not British. Okay. So this is, I don't know, I think I digressed, but I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah. So one more thing I wanted to ask or mention here is that, they call themselves Musafir on this earth. These people call themselves Musafir on this earth. Or as you said, that he also used to call himself as an agent.
Yes.
Correct. So this
agent
is how
of Khuda.
Agent of Khuda. या फिर if I may say, they ऐसा कहते हैं कि मुसाफिर है धरती पर on the earth and their work is nothing. सब कुछ खुदा का दिया हुआ है, बच्चे भी खुदा के दिए हुए हैं. Nothing. So their work is just come on this earth.
तुम कोई काम नहीं करते, बच्चे ऐसे टपकते आसमान से.
And बच्चे पैदा करो and then die. So they are musafir.
Yeah, they are musafirs.
Correct.
Yeah.
So do you believe Tipu Sultan's religious ideology was more significant in his policies or political strategies?
So you have one key word out here which is ideology. This term ideology does not have a history of more than 300 years or even lesser than that. So it is not a religious ideology in that sense. It is theology. The word you're looking for is theology, which is the Islamic theology in his case, and not just Tipu, but every Muslim invader and Sultan, Nawab, who acquired political power and who ruled in India.
Okay.
So it is part and parcel of that. To understand, how theology operates, and this is equally valid for Tipu and even for Aurangzeb, Shah Jahan, Ibrahim Lodi, all these guys. How this operates, how theology operates, is that every Muslim state, every Islamic state is a theocratic or a theological state, meaning there is no divorce between religion and state or religion and politics. Okay, so everything, law, justice, economics, taxation, war, strategy, everything is traced back to the scriptures.
Okay.
So Tipu was no different. In many of his letters, I just mentioned how he wrote those letters to himself, but in his other letters that he wrote to his various officials and military generals and commanders, he repeatedly mentions that this is, Khudadat Sarkar, and the goal is to run this whole state, my kingdom, according to the tenets of my religion.
Okay.
It is very, very clear. It is the same thing that Aurangzeb also did. Masiri Alamgiri and various other documentation that he has left, that this is a proper Islamic state and it will be ruled by Sharia. So there is a lot of these hot air balloons have been floated over the last 30-40 years about something called political Islam and religious Islam. There is no such differentiation. Okay. Both in theory and practice.
Okay.
Ziauddin Barani, he's a, let's see, 13th and 14th century Islamic chronicler. He has written an elaborate manual on Islamic statecraft. And for every line that he writes in that, he finds a quotation from either their holy book or the Hadith. And various Islamic scholars of jurisprudence.
Okay.
So it is par for the course. You can't separate it. So Tipu did the same thing. So don't use the word ideology. Out here.
Okay.
All right. So you use these, what is it? Policy and strategy, all these things. No, they are all part of their elements of one organic whole called theology.
Okay.
Make sense?
Correct. So, as you mentioned that, or he used to write these letters to himself, where he mentioned that, this is Khudadat Sarkar and everything. So, how does a king take decisions? I mean, and how does he give these orders to the public? जो उनकी जो जनता है, जो ऑडियंस है, वहां तक वो मैसेज कैसे जाता है? क्योंकि while taking these decisions, आप एक रूलर बोलकर you are taking these decisions, or you take these decisions like, okay, ये वहां मुझे खुदा ने बोला है and I'm taking these decisions.
No, nobody has asked me this question before. Okay, wonderful. So, see, we all live in something called a democratic system. To understand these things, you have to, physically you can't transport yourself back to those days. So you have to at least try to mentally transport yourself back to those days and visualize your life as a citizen under an absolute despotism, under an absolute theocratic and a theological state like these Islamic states. The decisions that a typical sultan, in this case Tipu, took was always top down. He did not have to consult people. He did not have to take permission from his own citizens. Right. Are you okay with this decision I'm taking? I want to construct this dam, day after tomorrow. Are you okay with it? Will your livelihoods be affected?
Correct.
ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. मुझे वहां पे डैम बनना है बस. बन जाएगा.
Correct.
There is no consultation. There is no, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, Assembly debates.
Not even with the ministers or anyone who are there.
He'll just inform them. And if the Sultan is a little open-minded and, he'll put forward this proposal or this order, order, then if some of those ministers raise objections that, it's a foolish move, and if the Sultan is a bit sane and he's open-minded, he might, withdraw the decision. But otherwise, it is a one-way street. As simple as that. So, if he says, okay, chalo, wahan pe dam banega, order will be farman. It's called a farman. Farman likha jayega, and that farman will be transmitted by messengers to every village in his territory. This is how it used to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you can dump the decision on the citizen.
As simple as that.
Correct.
As simple as that.
And it's a farman that you have to follow.
So you see, there used to be a term which is no longer much in use. Mai Baap Sarkar.
Achha.
Okay. So if you watch old Hindi movies, bureaucrats used to be addressed as Sarkar or Mai Baap.
Correct.
So it comes from here.
Okay. So was he more of an opportunist, if we see?
No, there is no opportunism for what?
No, like the French alliance, if we talk about, and the other Islamic rulers, if we compare. Do you think his opposition to British was genuinely for Indian sovereignty, or was it more about the personal empire building?
Okay, you have asked me 5 questions in one question. Okay, let's unpack it. Tipu Sultan, when he came to power, he wanted to continuously expand his empire, whatever his father had left. Remember, Tipu had inherited an empire which did not belong even to his father. Hyder Ali was an ordinary mercenary, meaning he was a gunda for hire.
Okay.
That's how he started his career. And he worked for various kings at that time. And finally, his talent as a strategist, as a great
Was discovered
warrior, was discovered by one of the generals in the Mysore Wadayar dynasty. He spotted his talent and recruited him, and this fellow grew, so strong. And due to the infighting within the Wadayar dynasty itself, palace intrigues, this fellow, he did a coup and he declared himself as Sultan. Sorry, and put the Mysore Wadayar royal family into house arrest. So he is a usurper. He is not the founder of a kingdom, in the sense that we understand founder of a kingdom. So Tipu was the son of such a man.
And he was trained.
And Tipu, initially, Hyder Ali, before he died, he did not leave behind any successor. There's no succession document, Wasihat Nama and all that.
Okay.
So he died suddenly, unexpectedly, out of terrible fever. And the news of his death was kept secret. And Tipu was not in Mysore at that time. He was camping somewhere, I think, near Tamil Nadu or Andhra. So in Chittur. Okay. So the news was conveyed to him at lightning speed. And then he returned to Srirangapatnam immediately, then said, I am the Sultan. So you see, there's no proper succession out here.
Okay.
Right? Look at all the levels of his career. And once he became Sultan, he started to Islamize the whole of South India. Like I said, I want to establish this kingdom of God here, kingdom of Khuda out here, and kept, waging mindless wars throughout South India.
Okay.
All right. And that's what he did. So you have to understand the political theater in South India at that time. So South India was in chaos, absolute chaos. On the one side, you had the British East India Company, which had already grown into a formidable force by the mid 18th century. And on the other side, the French were also slowly growing in strength in what they call Carnatic, roughly South India. And the Dutch were very strong in Kerala.
Okay.
They had expelled the Portuguese. And then, who was the other guy? You had Nizam in Hyderabad. And on the other side, you had the Marathas, who were the greatest political power at that time, feared by everybody. So you look at this chessboard, right? And Tipu was also counted, largely thanks to his inheritance from Hyder Ali. He was also counted as a great power, as a powerful, force to contend with. And this guy kept on waging these wars of conquest, needless wars. There is no power in South India which he did not fight against. He fought with Nizam. He fought with the Nawab of Arcot. He fought with Wasalat Jung. He fought with Nizam of Hyderabad. He fought with Nawab of Kadapa. He fought with the British. He fought with the Marathas.
Right.
So you see, needless fighting. So when you say opportunist, what he was doing is like every expansionist king. He was looking to enlarge the boundaries of his kingdom.
Alliances. Okay.
So if it means that, let's say, we are in 2024, okay, and at a particular point in time, I have X amount of political power and so many square kilometers of territory under my control. But who is my most powerful enemy today? It is the British. And who is the enemy of British? The French, who can match them equally. Okay, remember also that the British and French were not fighting with each other just in India. They had a historical rivalry in Europe also, which spilled over into India. So, enemy's enemy is my friend. So, which is why Tipu aligned with the French. In order to get a powerful, support against his foreign enemy, the British.
Correct. So, what about the harsh policies, harsh taxation policies or land seizures from Hindus?
Yeah, so that is part of his theocratic regime. even to answer this question, we have to go back to his father's time, Hyder Ali's time. What Hyder Ali did, he was a true believer. He also destroyed temples and, did enforced conversions and all that. But
Correct.
He did not declare his kingdom as a Khudadat Sarkar. It was a semi-theocratic state. He spotted the best talent and surrounded himself with them. His advisory council, his ministers, if there was a able military commander, he would, pay him well, promote him and keep him.
Okay.
And he also ensured that the administration has to run smoothly. Hyder Ali, by the way, was illiterate. But he had this street smartness, this raw instinct. All right. So he surrounded himself, fine, I might be Sultan, but sitting on the throne is one thing, and running an administration is an entirely different thing. You need the support of a large and efficient bureaucracy who will listen to you, and you will listen to them. This Hyder had. As soon as Tipu came, what he did, he Islamized the whole administration except 2 or 3 officers. His prime minister was a Hindu named Diwan Purnaya. Another tenacious man, a brilliant man who outlasted 3 Vodayar kings and outlasted both Tipu and both Hyder and Tipu and the British. Extraordinary man, brilliant guy. So he kept this Diwan Purnaya is the person who sent a secret message to Tipu Sultan saying that, look, your father has died, you have to come. So Tipu did not forget that, loyalty, and he kept him.
Okay.
Apart from a couple of people like that, he purged his entire bureaucracy and administration of Hindu officers. If any Hindu officer had to remain there, they had to compulsorily convert to Islam.
Oh. This talks about the significant atrocities on Hindus also?
This is exactly what Aurangzeb also did. So, you are chief secretary of some state. Unless you convert to Islam, you will be dismissed from service.
Right.
So, to give a contemporary analogy, this is how it is. All right. So that he did. He was not a good administrator. And by the end of, the Third Anglo-Mysore War, the economy that Hyder Ali had built up was shattered into less than 50% by Tipu, single-handedly. His army, likewise, gone, reduced to, reduced by more than 60%. Okay. All thanks to these needless wars of expansion and, conquest. So, that is one thing. And his so-called economic policy was to change the names of weights and measures, coins, the value of currency. So, if you do this kind of overnight measures,
correct,
you will bankrupt your treasury. This is what Tipu did, and land tax on homes and agricultural lands owned by Hindus.
Jizya tax.
Jizya is different. Jizya is pilgrim tax.
Right.
So, land revenue tax on farming. That tax levied on lands owned by Hindus. It was increased to extortionate sums, according to, I think, Professor M.H. Krishna. He's written a nice book called Economic History of Mysore under Tipu Sultan and Hyder Ali. So, according to his estimate, I think this fellow raised the land tax to up to something like 80% or something.
Oh.
So, you're paying 20 rupees. So, you add 60 rupees to that. Only because you're a Hindu. Yeah. And confiscations of land, seizures, are part of the game.
Correct. But when we talk about these atrocities on Hindu population...
And if you want tax-free exemption, as a Hindu, you convert.
Right. Conversion. But what is the mindset behind this? Like, you have to, expand your empire or expand the religion?
Both. Look, like I said, there is no difference between theology and politics.
That's why convert.
Both of them feed into each other. Theology asks you to claim lands, unconquered lands and people for your own faith. And the sword and army provides you the means to do this.
Right. So atrocities on Hindu population, which we are talking about in Coorg and Malabar. What do you think was the impact of these atrocities on local culture? Because local culture and religious communities, if we talk, why do these events receive less attention in our historical narratives also?
Yeah, in the mainstream historical narratives, overall, people who read history in India, throughout India, this impact has been minimized. Of course, Tipu has been painted as a great national hero and patriot and freedom fighter. We'll get to that maybe later. I think you have a question on that. That apart, the inherited consciousness of people in Karnataka, they have preserved the record of his atrocity. Especially if you travel to, say, this place on the way to Sakleshpur, there's a fort called Manjirabad Fort. So that was really, vandalized and damaged when Tipu went on an expedition on that side. So out there and in Coorg, they call street dogs as Tipu. Even today.
Really?
Yeah. That gives you a small idea of the kind of, brutal impact that his invasions had caused. So he invaded, Coorg twice, not just once. Both were extraordinarily brutal. Entire villages set on fire, of course, temples destroyed, thousands of people, enslaved, forcibly converted, whole towns depopulated, and their population was bound in chains, beaten all the way, and put in a jail in Srirangapatna. Even from Malabar, for example, you're from Kozhikode. Kozhikode was depopulated to an extent that it was the hub of spice trade and spice production for God knows how many centuries. One invasion by Tipu Sultan, just one invasion by Tipu Sultan, stopped spice activities, spice trade, spice growing for 40 years. That place took 40 years to recover back to normalcy. This was caused by one invasion.
Yeah.
So in Malayalam history, they refer to Tipu's barbaric invasion as Padayottam, meaning military march. So, horror stories are preserved by, across generations even today in that whole Malabar region. And, rounding up men, women, even lactating mothers, tying them up to trees, and lactating mothers, with infants, who were feeding on the breast would be cut off. And tying people upside down, flogging them, horrific. Burning down entire villages and towns, literally setting them on fire, forcibly circumcising boys and adult men, converting them, forcing the beef down their throats.
Right. So how was his rule different from his father's rule, Hyder Ali?
Yeah, like I said, Hyder Ali didn't embark on this kind of, compulsory Islamization. To that extent, we have to give him credit. It was not a tyrannical regime, but he was by heart, he was a mercenary. By his basic nature, he was a mercenary more than an what you call a fanatic who's also a king, who also has an empire to him. So this is the difference.
Tipu Sultan's reputation as a benevolent ruler and champion of communal harmony is debunked by you. So how did this myth of tolerance arise, and why does it persist in some certain narratives?
No, this is a development, like I said, about Indian secularism. This whole whitewashing and recasting Tipu as some kind of a freedom fighter is a very recent development which happened after 1960s, or at any rate after India became freedom, because the Congress party wanted Muslim vote bank.
That's it.
As simple as that.
Okay.
There's no other reason.
And what role did British colonial historians play in shaping his dual image?
What dual image?
Like Tipu Sultan as both tyrant and as a hero.
No British record ever has a single kind word for this man. He was their sworn enemy. You should see the kind of adjectives they use. These British fellow, Lewin Bowring and William Kirkpatrick, Cornwallis, Lord Mornington, also known as Lord Wellesley. You should see the kind of language they use for this fellow. Our sworn enemy, that barbarian from Mysore, this is the kind of thing they use.
Okay.
That horrible You should also see the kind of language that Jesuits who were visiting India at that time use, especially in Kerala. Father Bartholomew.
Okay.
I think he was a German Jesuit or from Portugal, one of those guys. He was an eyewitness to Tipu Sultan's, this barbarism. And he also destroyed churches on an epic scale in Mangalore and in Kerala.
Okay.
But
his death anniversary is also celebrated, right?
Where?
Somewhere.
No, this our current Chief Minister, God bless him, Mr. Siddaramaiah, he started something called Tipu Jayanti in his previous regime. So that's a new development.
Yeah.
So that, the run up to these new developments were to, you have to build a narrative first before you can do this Jayanti kind of, circus tricks. So it's part of the same thing, the same secular nonsense. Look, they call him a freedom fighter. How? How is that possible? This guy came to power in 1782, died in 1799. You did all of India. That time India went stretched all the way to Afghanistan and Burma. Okay. All of India was not under one banner, boss.
Right.
What freedom fighter? He was just like any other conqueror, intent in expanding his kingdom and his religion, as simple as that. It so happened that the British were his most powerful enemies and he fought against them. It was not the British government. The British didn't even have a government then. It was an MNC called East India Company. He fought against that. It's like Karnataka or Odisha or Andhra fighting against Microsoft or Google in India. That is an analogy, as simple as that.
Then what about the contemporary politics influencing the current perception of Tipu Sultan, especially in Karnataka, where debates over his legacy continue to divide the communities?
No, I think I already answered this. So this, here's another nonsense, okay. So the overnight and radical changes by any government, it always ends up in disaster. I'll take a random example, Muhammad bin Tughlaq. What he did, until then, Delhi was the capital of the slave dynasty, okay, or the Mamluk Sultan dynasty. So this guy sat on Delhi throne. One day he decided that, look, this is not a good capital, it's not working for me. Let me shift the capital to Devagiri. Today it's known as Daulatabad, Maharashtra. Okay. It's one thing to shift the capital. It is an entirely different thing to transfer the entire population of Delhi to Devagiri.
Right.
So that's what, nearly 2,000 kilometers of distance on foot at that time. What does it do? It destroys Delhi, it destroys Devagiri also.
True.
Then what he did, Tughlaq, he brought currency parity, meaning until then, gold had the highest value as a unit of currency. He put copper on par with gold. Okay. Within 3 months, his whole treasury was bankrupt. Right?
Right.
Look at the possibilities. For thieves and robbers and scamsters. Right? So the same thing Tipu did. Overnight, he decided that, he went to the extent of changing the name of the months in the calendar.
Okay.
Changing the name of weights and measures. If it is a kilogram.
Names of places also?
Names of places. Now, the names of places is a very minor thing compared to these things. So you change the name of a unit of, weights and measures. If it is a kilogram, he would find out the nearest equivalent, Islamic equivalent of a kilogram, so that it corresponds with the Prophet's name.
Oh. Do you
I've given a
any?
detailed list
Okay.
in my book. I can't recall that offhand.
Okay.
I've given the detailed list in my book. So these are all this kind of overnight measures, changing the language.
Yeah.
Until then, it was a practice for centuries to maintain official documents in Sanskrit, in Kannada, and in Marathi in the Mysore kingdom. This fellow banned all three languages, and he compulsorily introduced Farsi administrative measures. So these have a very long-term and disastrous consequences. So what, I mean, I don't know this kind of narrative that all politically motivated.
Correct.
You can hire one of those, what you call pen for hire academics who will tell you, who will dance according to your party line. Correct. I belong to no party, but anyway.
Yeah, but he was also known for his military tactics, especially the terror ones and to subdue his enemies. You spoke about this. How does this compare to his image as a patriotic defender against the British?
What patriotism?
Was it more about fear?
No, what patriotism? Raavya, it's a very profound question at one level. Because things like patriotism, nationalism, these are very, very new terms, new concepts in human history. All right. Nationalism, patriotism, this is an outgrowth of 18th century Europe or even 19th century Europe. So it does not have a history of more than 250 years. That's the earliest you can trace back these things. Now, it arose, these patriotism, nationalism, they arose in a specific historical, political and social context in Europe. Okay, and these were imported into India during the freedom struggle. This nationalism thing, you can trace it to the growth of something called patriotism and nationalism in India. You can trace it roughly back to the after the second half of the 19th century, not before that. When India began to, colonize India, began to develop a greater interaction with Europe and saw, developments out there. Right. And, a lot of our freedom fighters tried to take their best ideas and see how they could shape it to the Indian context, the freedom struggle.
So, Sandeep sir, is it right to say that Tipu Sultan was overlooked for political gains?
I wouldn't exactly use the word overlooked. The word you're looking for is whitewashed and downplayed, and his record has been painted in the exact opposite light of what he really was.
As a
the point
freedom fighter.
Yeah, the freedom fighter, he's also called a great champion of Kannada. Whereas he had, like I said, he had banned Kannada, Marathi and Sanskrit from his official documentation. So, this is basically vote bank politics, nothing beyond that. Now, just to give a fairly recent political context to this whitewashing, until the 1970s, Tipu Sultan, even within Karnataka, was not really glorified as a freedom fighter or some kind of a national hero or all the glorification that is happening that has happened over the last 20 years. His record had been portrayed accurately, except that he was not elevated, glorified like what has happened today. Sometime around 1974-75 in that region, one Congress minister in a function in Mysore, he started this, in passing. He mentioned about, how Tipu was also a freedom fighter. That kind of, that did not acquire any traction, not much of a traction. One. Two, in the 70s, an author named Bhagwan S. Gidwani, he wrote an atrocious book called The Sword of Tipu Sultan. in which he called Tipu Sultan as a tiger of Mysore and, things like that, pretty much glorified him like anything. About a week or a month after the book hit the stands, a very factual review appeared in Hindustan Times, where the reviewer blasted Gidwani's book. It, the outrage was so much that Gidwani was forced to retract. Retract in the sense he said, look, okay, I mean, I'm not a historian. That's how they take refuge.
Correct.
These fellows, these distortionists, that's how they take refuge. When they're, when their bluff is called, he said, look, I'm not a historian. I, had this image of Tipu as a great hero, as a, tiger of Mysore and all that. So therefore, based on my mental image, I wrote this novel. I'm not a historian. Then why do you call it a historical novel, sir? When you get caught with your pants down, this is what you do. After that, a guy named Sanjay Khan, Bollywood guy.
There was a television serial, I remember.
He took Bhagwan Gidwani's novel, alleged historical novel, and made a Doordarshan a TV series with the same name. Tipu Sultan, the Tiger of Mysore. The Sword of Tipu Sultan.
Correct.
He made that TV series, and that also, evoked instant outrage. And the first lawsuit which was filed against Sanjay Khan came from the Kerala Samajam located in Bombay. They filed a suit in the Bombay High Court to stop the airing of this serial on DD. So a lot of trouble went into this, and according
But it went on for a longer period of time, I guess.
I mean, I think if my memory
all of us
is not
watched
wrong,
it as kids.
if my memory is not incorrect, it went on for about a year. A lot of cuts were ordered. Then, in some circles, there was a belief that because Tipu, this fellow Sanjay Khan had portrayed Tipu as this great, king and sultan and all that, his studio in Mysore, premier studio, caught fire, and this guy suffered about 70-degree burns. Sanjay Khan. Multiple plastic surgeries had to be done. It was big news back then. Okay, so this is a level of distortions that has happened, all thanks to this politics of, Muslim vote bank politics. So, this Khan, he was the minorities minister or something, MOS, for state, Minister of State, during the UPA government. That time, he wanted to start a Islamic university in near Srirangapatna, and he wanted to name it after Tipu Sultan. So a lot of outrage happened. I think the proposal was eventually dropped. After that, Mr. Siddaramaiah enters into the picture. He quit from Janata Dal Secular, from that party, and he had to show, and before he joined Congress, he put on a big show of strength that, I have this level of vote bank behind me. Out here, it is called the Ahinda vote bank. A means Alpasankyak, meaning minorities, meaning Muslims. He is Hindulida Varga, meaning backward. Okay, D, the is Dalit. So this was his broad social vote bank that he said, I have this much support. And as part of, building his political strength, he began to pander to this Muslim vote bank in an unprecedented way, which is also not coincidentally, when this Tipu Sultan thing began to take traction. All this started roughly around 2006.
Okay.
So that is when he hired some former Gnanapith awardees, the great Mr. Girish Karnad. So he wrote a play in Kannada called Tippu Vina Kanasugalu, meaning the dreams of Tipu Sultan, where he envisages a glorious,
empire?
Empire based on love, peace, harmony, people are drinking milk and honey, this kind of thing. And it is all made possible by Tipu. So he wrote this horrid play. So this is how it went on. This narrative of whitewashing and then recasting Tipu from what he was, a tyrant, a bigot, into a national hero and an icon of tolerance and religious harmony.
Correct.
This is the short story of this whole thing.
But how and why do Hindus tolerate all of this? Like any kind of television series which we are talking about, or these days we see when we are talking about Sanatan Dharma also, we just don't stand up for these. Like there must be only one person who's standing against, but then why do we always ignore?
You want the long answer or short answer?
Long answer.
Long answer. A long answer is rooted in our traditions.
We have been invaded. We suffered.
The long answer is that it lies in the foundations of Sanatana Dharma. Both Islam and Christianity, they are religious imperialisms. All right. So, the very definition of an imperialism means conquest, both military and otherwise, and political. You do a military conquest to acquire political power. You use the political power to retain your imperialism and your what you call as your theocracy. Okay. Look at the foundations of Sanatana Dharma. Here, what is known as keep politics and religion separate, this is the most refined and exalted system of a whole life, which precisely does this. All right. So, by nature, Hindus are not political. Politics forms a very insignificant part of the Hindu psyche, which we have inherited. Which is why when you say vote bank, you call it a Muslim vote bank. There is no Hindu vote bank for this reason. We are not political by nature. It is not in our DNA. Unless you understand this, you have to understand it at this level of, at the philosophical level. Here's the thing. Now, there is something called fact and value. That glass out there, that is a fact. You can see that it is a tangible object and it has a chemical composition. There is a process to make it, right? So that is a fact. Now, it is a glass meant to drink water. All right. Water is also a fact. It also has a chemical value. Okay. Keep that aside. Now, is water just, one of the 5 elements, right? Panchabhuta. Is it just that, or is it something more? When you understand this at the philosophical level, let's say you're thirsty. Like, you have not taken water for, say, 6 hours and it's hot outside. And then I come to you and without you asking me, I give you water.
Yeah.
What I am doing is, I am displaying value, an ideal, a virtue. We call it, helping. You did not ask me for water, but I sensed that you were thirsty, I volunteered and gave you.
Right.
Nobody asked me to give you this. It is part of my value system, my cultural inheritance. So that is value. So, and this glass and that water, they acquire a value because my value system tells me to offer water to a thirsty person. Unless you understand at this level, you will not get clarity in, either politics, history. This is how we have to analyze these things. Okay, so that is the difference between fact and value. Now you extrapolate this to something like politics and an overall system of life, which is what Sanatana Dharma is. Okay? The purpose of life is to be liberated from the bonds from the cycle of birth and death. What is known as संसार का चक्र जो बोलते हैं ना, उससे विमुक्त होने का गोल है हमारा लाइफ का. This is what our innate DNA Hindu value system is. And all your practices, all your puja, your temple going, whatever you do, okay, it is all meant to attain this larger goal, which is beyond our comprehension. Okay, and politics is meant to serve, it is meant to subserve the attainment of an individual's spiritual goal. Clear?
Yeah.
So politics is there so that our political system is meant to protect you, to keep you safeguarded, so that every individual can work to, is free and is safe to attain this spiritual goal. So you see in this hierarchy where politics stands in the Hindu psyche.
Correct. But so when we talk about Hindu psyche also.
So that is why there's no politics out here is not meant to kind of, go on a world conquest spree.
Yeah, we can't do that.
So वहाँ पे कोई वो true spirituality का चीज ही नहीं है. Because the whole earth belongs to some unseen god somewhere sitting out there, and that unseen god is always a jealous male god.
Yeah.
There is no concept of Devi either in Christianity or Islam. So
True.
The earth is meant for आपका भोग के लिए है सारा creation. यहाँ पे earth is क्षमया धरित्री. It is meant to nurture, preserve. So you have such opposition on this fundamental level.
Both levels.
So you say democracy, voting, ये सब Tipu, distortions and all that. You have to look at these issues at this level. Then only you will get clarity.
Yeah. But so forget about the clarity. I'll tell you what.
You should have that clarity.
No.
Don't edit this.
No, I'll not edit that. But what I'm trying to say here is, just listen to my point, that when I say, why are we Hindus scared? This is because when, I keep doing these kind of pods, where I talk about Hindu, or where I'm talking about temple economics, or invasions and everything. So what happens is, what I see is that once my father called me up and he said, इतने सारे podcast मत करो. किस पर? Where you're showing Muslims in a bad light. And I was like, क्यों आप बोल रहे हो ऐसे? मैंने कुछ गलत नहीं किया. My there is no bad intention here. This is our history. So he was like, nahi, Raavya. The people are not good. So, there is that slight hint that he wants me to give.
No, it comes from a place of fear.
Yeah. And we are scared.
Yeah.
That's why we want to ignore.
Because over the last, under this so-called secularist regime, which lasted for 70 years. If you take the first elections were held in 1951 or 52. From then till about 99 or so, 98, 99, that time, you had this so-called secularist regime, which protected, which pandered to the worst and the most fundamentalist elements of that community. And it gave them a license to run riot. There is absolutely no fear. So, when the state itself is so weak, and it encourages this only because a bunch of people want to enjoy power for perpetuity, this is what happens.
Exactly. Now, when we talk about social media also, I have friends, good friends who are very good nature. I always keep telling this. But this behavior, this double standard or hypocrisy, where when there is a match of India and Pakistan, you are posting stories about Pakistan. Their players, where we are posting, and you do not like me sharing anything about Hindu culture. And we should just ignore it.
Okay, it comes from three places. One, people who do this, engage in this kind of what you call as hypocrisy, they are for sale. Okay, they do this only for money or, whatever. The second category are what I call incurables. These are all Hindus only, no?
No.
You mentioned. Okay, fine, whoever it is. Then they are ideologically committed. They are very clear about where their loyalties lie.
Exactly.
So one is a sold out thing. Second is a loyalist. The third is the brainwashed category. which is the most dangerous. There is a fourth category, which is people who are like totally scared. That's the only answer.
I believe all these categories belong to...
Yeah. Your average person, whoever is peddling this narrative, will fall into one of these four categories.
Great. Okay, sir. But it was a fantastic conversation that we had here. And I want to talk more about the other stuff also. And I think we'll make a part 2 on the Nizam
that
rule.
minister's name is Rahman Khan.
Now you remembered.
Yeah, you can put it if you want.
But yes, so we'll come with a part 2 where we are talking about the Nizam rule. And I hope audience also love this podcast. And whatever their questions are, they can comment it and we'll answer. And thank you again, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.